Okay, thank you, Cicely. I hope everyone's okay today. So today we're talking about exploring culture and well-being. So what is the definition of well-being? Well, is it the state of being comfortable, healthy, or happy? And what is the definition of culture? Well, it is the ideas, the customs, social behavior of a particular people or society. Culture is learned and passed down the generations. Culture is also made up of ethnicity, nation, belief, tradition, and diversity. So I don't know if Cicely can show the slides. I don't think I can see it on my screen, but on the slides, it shows words associated with social, cultural wellness or well-being. And I'll read off a few of these. Empathy, belonging, there we go. Cultural competence, ethics, network, interact, nurture, foster, support. These can be found on the right hand side of that slide there. Understanding, respect, justice, family, fairness, adaptation, tolerance, connections, boundaries, relationships, communication, interconnectedness, sensitivity, and trust. So what do we want to achieve in our well-being in relation to culture? Well, I think a lot of people, you know, would like to attain physical and mental health, emotional health, social health, intellectual health, occupational health, spiritual health, and environmental health. And these can be found in the picture and a circular diagram in the middle there of that slide. So if we take the wider African culture, for example, and bear in mind, I think I might be generalizing because I don't think every single African household is like this, but I'll say for at least some, or to many. If we take the wider African culture, for example, it starts with the family, and we are brought up to respect our elders. This is true in other cultures, but coming from an African country to a Western country can be a bit of a culture shock. Parents may often find themselves having to adjust to the more liberal society. Things such as sleepovers at friends' houses, which is the norm in most Western culture, or playing outside for long hours at a time, may be frowned upon by stricter and more conservative African parents. Many African households are very religious and may expect their kids to study for long hours. African children might find it unfair, not experiencing the more apparent freedoms indulged by their Western counterparts, and might lead the African children to, rebel somewhat. So we are not saying that the often less liberal African parent must all of a sudden become a soft touch in regard to raising their children, but they must respect and adapt to other cultures and try and find a balance and common ground in which the family unit can flourish. So I'm just gonna leave it there, and I think it's gonna be a really good conversation today. So I'm gonna hand over to the excellent James and the wonderful Stella and Shalom. Thank you again. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Tonda, for that introduction. I always feel like we don't need to say anymore. She basically summed it up beautifully. James, if you can agree.
Yeah, I mean, definitely he has set the pace for us and opened the door for all of us to enter in a very culturally minded mood. So we need to really look at what Tommy has said, coming from an African background and then adjusting in Western culture. Is really how do you blend in, how do you integrate, but also how do you support the young people to understand both cultures, and it's pretty difficult, just like Tommy said, for young people to be growing up in a culture that has got other factors from an African perspective. And these are some of the things that we parents struggle with sometimes. How do we reinforce our tradition on our kids, but at the same time, how do we minimize them being rebellious, because if they rebel, they're not going to learn from us. So let's take our time also, and also look after our own moods as well in terms of talking about it. I know a lot of parents must have had some very difficult conversation with young people, or even at work. Trying to even understand how people understand your culture at work can be extremely difficult for us. So please, let's look after ourselves. But this is a place where we can actually venture out and ventilate, if you like, and express your own experiences, because we all have very valuable lived experiences. So please feel free to share, and I can give you back to Stella to take us through the other stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian. Nice to be our members that are here. We have had a chat about culture before. Sorry, can you not hear me? Okay, I'll try and scream the laptop. Please do let me know if it's in and out. So we have had a conversation about culture before. So this is almost kind of like part 2 of culture, and as Tombe and James have so beautifully summed up, culture itself is just a set of ideas, behaviors and attitudes and traditions that kind of exist within large groups of people. And obviously these ideas and behaviors and traditions are passed down from generation to generation. And obviously a lot of us being the diaspora kids, or a lot of us in the chat having migrated from different culture to now adopting the Western culture. Now we're going to kind of look at the well-being aspects and how culture is involved within well-being, and how different cultures perceive well-being. So for those of us who are new, welcome. This is kind of just a poll section. So we have like 1 or 2 questions and have a brief discussion surrounding the questions, just to kind of gauge where everyone's at. Sorry, beg your pardon. So I'm just going to launch the polls now. Can everyone see the poll questions? Yep.
Yes.
So the first question is, how important is culture to our well-being? I know there's a lot of numbers, percentages, but just to, it's very broad. So 100% is 5, 50%, 25, and 10%. And the second question, how much do you think culture gets in the way of, also, apologies for the type, of your well-being? So that's 100%, 75, 50, 10. And please do feel free, like once we do end the poll, do feel free to kind of give your opinion, either just on the conversation or the questions, and we'll just take a few and go from there. So give you maybe a minute more just to maybe 20 seconds. Thank you so much to those of you who already answered. And then we'll just have a brief discussion. Perfect. I'm just going to end the poll results. Is everyone okay with that? Yeah, just a brief nod to your head. Perfect. Right, can everyone see the poll results? So the first question, how important is culture to our well-being? So the majority of us answered 100%, 71% said 100, 7% said 75, 21% said 50-50. And the second one, how much do you think culture gets in the way of your well-being? 21% said 100%, 75%, oh, sorry, beg your pardon, 43% said 75, and 36% said 50-50. Okay, so quite interesting. So I thought almost be the other way around, but very interesting poll results. Does anyone want to kind of get the ball rolling and kind of give their opinion or their reasoning as to why they answered the way they did?
Can I speak?
Yes, sure.
Good morning, everybody. This is not recent regarding culture. Some years ago, I lived in, I think it was Birmingham, and when I was much younger, I still think I'm good at most things, but I was very good at certain things, you know, culinary arts. I love that, and I love, you know, doing different dishes, different creation with cakes and so on and so on. And I was living in a house with other people, and this one, well, she was white. She said to me, "Oh, Lorraine, you are so good. You shouldn't be black." And I looked at her, and you know, I basically asked her, "Well, what do you mean?" And she didn't respond. So I was thinking, because of the color of my skin, because of my, I'm not allowed to be good at what I was doing. So I think it does affect us, and I still think it does affect us up to today, and you know, it affects our children and our grandchildren. And basically, I think it's a system or whatever that we can't get away from. We just have to do what we can and do it to the best, regardless.
I think
Could you hear?
yeah, we can hear you.
Could you hear me? Yes, and I think that regardless of we just do it to our best, because before we traveled, before we came to this country, we were doing things to the best of our ability. And so I don't see why, you know, we should be made to feel that, you know, we should be this color or we should be that color. We just live as who we are, and you know, we cannot change who we are.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that just came back to my mind as I mean, I voted 100%, and I thought, should I have? But yes, I think that's what I want to say, really. That's what I want to say.
I think that's a very interesting point that you've brought up that I didn't even consider, that we didn't talk about at the beginning, but even just other cultures' perception of our culture.
Yeah.
Yes, you know, some people, you know, certain cultures think, you know, that quote unquote say African or, you know, Caribbean cultures aren't integrated with like creative side with regards to, you know, like well-being and stuff like that. But, you know, it's like you said, it's important to know, you know what you stand for and kind of educate other people on your beliefs and in terms of culture. So yeah, thank you for that. Perception is a very important point. We've got a couple of hands. We had. Sorry, I always say Stacey, but I know it's it's something completely different. So Stacey, then we had Emeka, and then Dr. Kanina. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hello, morning everybody. Love being here on a Thursday. I think it's exactly what our first young lady, glasses not on, so I can't remember her name, was saying, that there's this assumption that there's this banana boat that you come off of and you either drink, party loud, or do slave-related work. And actually, we're so much more than that as a people. And as you see, I'm in my Trinidad colors. I literally do it the opposite way around. I have kept all my Trinidad, African, Indian, whatever, because Trinidad is a multicultural place. So I have kept my culture, and people have to work around that. And I know some people find that very interesting, but actually I get more respect from people living here, and they want to eat my food, and they want to listen to my music, and they want to learn from me. So that's why I put 100% in both ways. So even though my children are born here, they associate as Caribbean because their mother's from Trinidad, their dad is half Cuban, half Jamaican, so they associate as Caribbean born in the UK. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Emeka?
Hello, thanks. Thanks, Stella. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I just wanted to add something to what Lorraine said when that lady made that comment that you are so good, you shouldn't even be black. I just feel like I don't this might come across. I don't know how this might come across, but I just feel some people just think people should think before they talk. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Because I just feel at some points is what me I'm learning now is that if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say nothing at all. That's where I look at it. Because some people just don't stop. Some people don't stop and think of how I want to say. Some people don't stop to think of what they might say. So, and what am I trying to say? Some people don't stop to think about what they say and the effect it will have on somebody. So that's just the whole thing. My own motto is that if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say nothing, especially when it comes to culture. Because you don't know how offensive it might be to the next person. Because everybody is different one way or the other. So it's all about having respect and tolerance for people's cultures. If you're not sure, ask. But don't make a very mean, condescending remark against somebody's culture. That's why I see it though.
Thank you, Emeka.
Yeah.
Did you kind of want a response from Lorraine, or is it just, yeah? Okay, cool. No worries. Dr. Kanina?
All right. I think culture is important, 100% to my well-being. Looking at the definition that we were given, that culture relates to a particular group of people, and they learn their methods of being able to invent, to adapt to their natural environment and social structures. So in that case, as far as I'm concerned, my African context is very useful and 100% important to my well-being. But in the second question, when my culture is exposed to other cultures, and then it is judged from other cultures, leading to some outcomes like it was indicated by the speaker, Lolin, which means that some people might want you to ignore your culture or marginalize your culture or reject your culture. This is where the conflict comes. And this affects especially those people who are born in a different culture other than their indigenous or traditional cultures, like our children here. This becomes a big problem because when your culture has been ignored or marginalized or rejected, you are told, you are shown that it is not important for your development or for your well-being. And that is why, like, that statement says, like, you look too good to be black. And that is the problem now. That is the conflict of cultures. And I don't know how that can be solved about, because it has a very big background, colonization, slavery, those type of things. And it is so deep rooted. But what people must know is that whether you like it or not, there is no way a particular group can benefit from a culture of another particular group. You can only benefit from the culture that you belong to. Whether you have left it or tried to ignore it, that will not change the situation. Whether it is abused or not, that will not change the situation. You will develop when you rely on the parameters of your culture. That is my comment.
Thank you, Dr. Nina. I think that you mentioned some very interesting points, quite intrigued on. The first about conflict within cultures. We're mentioning a lot about cultures, the clash of cultures within nationalities, not nationalities rather, sorry, ethnicity? Yeah, ethnicity rather than nationalities, because obviously, you know, you have conflicts with, like, so now obviously being in the Western world, you know, black and white. However, there's also conflicts within, you know, cultures within our own like, you know, countries. You know, you have like different tribes that also conflict within like different cultures. So that's an interesting point. And then your other point about not being able to what was the word that you used? Benefit from other cultures. I think that's a very interesting point. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do, maybe I kind of have a different opinion to this, and maybe someone can also kind of chime in. I think sometimes within cultures, obviously, it's very, like I said, it's shared beliefs. And once you kind of go to other cultures, they have different beliefs, and it's something that you might, you know, might be able to adopt, you know, because even being here, obviously, as a young person, yes, we have the culture that I've, you know, grown up with, but there's definitely some things within this culture, you know, that I've been able to adopt, and especially with regards to well-being. You know, sometimes we have like negative stigmas from like our cultures with regards to mental well-being, that here are kind of slightly different, or vice versa. You know, not bashing any cultures, but just saying that I think sometimes there are things that we kind of can pick or learn from rather, without compromising our own beliefs. I don't know if anyone has anything. I can see Alice has hand up, and then Rachel.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to be a little bit controversial on the topic of culture and well-being. I'm just probably going to pull out on some of the researches that I've done in the country. I'm very interested in young people, so my research, especially young people who immigrate who come with their parents in this country. One of the things that I found in most of the research that I've done is the young people that come from Africa who mentioned that at school, this Pekot is not my words, they are words. When they arrive here, most of them come to join their parents and all that. When they arrive here, they are bullied at school by Black Caribbeans, those of African descent. That's why I stated that my disclaimer in the beginning is that this is quite controversial, but these are things that young people face in schools, and we need to talk about them, which is one, because they are put down because of their cultural aspects, the way they speak, the way they do things in school when they first arrive. So to fit in, the young people who are immigrants coming from Africa have to adjust a lot. So in a way of trying to fit. So they are bullied by Black Caribbeans who are here, but they're also racialized at the same time in the same space by white people in the schools, young people, racism, Black Caribbeans of generation descent, in the sense of their culture, how they speak, how they present themselves. And that has affected some of them with their mental well-being. The young people that I research mainly are 18 and above. So they are talking about their experiences when they come, what we call the 1.5 generations, the one born in Africa but come here and join their parents at a younger age. So it has an impact on them, a lot of that. And we need to be actually talking about how we come up with ways of narrating such stories, which are normally not in the mainstream, but can be narrated in communities, how physically we identify with that. It affects their identity because at the end, some of them don't know actually. For example, I'll give an example of people that come from places where there was colonization for so many years, like probably Zimbabwe, South Africa, and all these other Southern African countries that were colonized for a long time. Their parents talk about culture. And when the parents say, oh, this is not our culture, it's not explained to them. They don't know their culture because it's mixed already with the Western ideologies because of the perpetual colonization that lasted for a long time. At the same time, there's some aspects of the culture that they're explained, this is not our culture, but the parents also play the Western culture. The ideologies are infused in the Western culture. The way they talk to the children, you need to be talking in English so that you get an A grade. So the languages are dying. So the children, at the same time, they're told they have to keep their culture. But at the same time, you need to speak in English so that you get A grades, you're able to get a job, you're able to assimilate. All these things are conflicting for our young people who are very troubled about these things that are happening in the spaces that they live. And on the end, I'll give a quote about Stuart Hall is a theorist who has talked about these kind of things that when you get to a point where there is, we must not collude with the West, which precisely normalizes, appropriates Africa by freezing it into a time zone of primitive culture and changing past Africa must at last be reckoned by some of the Caribbean people that it's actually not primitive, and we need to bring that into the mainstream of teaching all our Black children that actually in Africa, people are not primitive. And because we are also buying into the Western ideology that Africa is primitive. And this is what we call a rule and divide narrative of seeing these are from Black Caribbeans, so the Black Africans feel inferior than the Black Caribbeans who have assimilated in the country. I'm talking about a research, I'm not talking about my own words, but this is a wide research that has happened in this country and that has been found happening. So what is culture? Culture in the global South is different from different parts. For example, I'm born in Bulawayo. The culture is different from somebody who grew up in Harare. So we can't be boxed in the same way of saying that I come from Zimbabwe, my culture is like this. It's very, very difficult to come up. So if my mom comes from Harare and my dad comes from Bulawayo, I've got two cultures there that intersect together. But at the same time, children who are here, my children will probably ask, so what is our culture? Why is it we don't have a traditional dress? What are the values that we think about? What are these things? I think at the beginning, they talked about respect for the elderly. Young people from Africa, yes, respect for the elderly, but then they question the patriarch of culture, that it dominates a lot of women and substitutes a lot of women to stay in their place, know where they belong. Is that culture, or is it something to do with oppression? So they are conflicted in these questions, which we continuously need to ask. And even the work that I do at university, some young people want to understand. So what is the African culture, even white people? It's not. Africa is a whole, it's not a homogeneous place together, just like Europe is not. It's got different aspects. So taking out things from different cultures is what you believe yourself is the value and culture, and that makes you a better person in yourself. Because sometimes there are so many deep traditions. There's a conflict of culture and Christianity in Africa. Which one is better? So we need to ask that, because we're saying this is our culture, but we are also Christians. But the young people who are now are asking the questions of saying, but Christianity came with the colonizers. So which one is our culture? So I'm just putting that to you, people, so that we have these discussions. They are very difficult discussions, but they are affecting the well-being of young people. And if we don't talk to them about these things, about the bullying they face at school, the identity crisis they have, about finding out what is really their culture, or who are they? Because at home, when they go home now, some of them have got different accent, they dress differently. And when they go home, what is being said by their parents, this is your home. Kenya is your home, Ghana is your home. When they go there, they don't fit. They're ostracized there because they are told the diaspora, they're given labels as diasporan, who can't even cook, who can't do anything. They come here, they're ostracized about their culture again. So where is home for them? I'm talking young people particularly. So we need to define how it's affecting their mental well-being, and start having these difficult conversations in spaces that we are right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice, for that. That's for that contribution. There's a lot to consider, and very interesting points. You know, just like you mentioned about identity, and obviously how it's important, obviously, with regards to children, not to, you know, deem certain cultures better, and because in that sense we're almost kind of demoralizing our own and trying, you know, putting our cultures on pedestal. A lot of really good points there. I don't know if anyone has comments. I saw Rachel's hand up.
Stella, before Rachel, just want to add just a little bit. I have few questions here which might help us to...
This also say.
Hello?
Yes, James.
Okay, good. Questions here really basically to put us in another mindset is, what values have we actually kept so far in our pursuit of rewarding life, moving from Africa to here? I think that's what Auntie Alice was also alluding to. What are the values? Let's think about this question. What are the values that you have kept from your traditional culture, your way of life? And also, what values have you actually lost because you want to adjust to a system that if you don't adjust, you're not going to have a better well-being, because somehow we need to focus on our well-being. That's what this purpose, this day or this topic is about today. How can you adjust to something at the same time maintaining your well-being at optimal level? And the third question really is values that you have actually gained or added to your own values, and why have you done that? And also then let's look at our gains and our losses. So Auntie Alice was talking about young people, and Dr. Karina also was talking about the advantage of your traditional culture. And no matter how you look at it, we need to look at that point of integration. Where do we integrate? How do we integrate? But when we talk about adjustments, it means different to different people. So what do we mean by adjustment? How do you know that you're adjusting to a tradition or a culture or a way of life? Let's look at it from our family perspective. Let's look at it from the community perspective. Let's look at it from your workplace perspective. Even when you go to church in this country, is there any change to how you used to go to church in Africa? And so let's look at all those adjustments, because this is really what is important today in terms of how do we link that to a proper well-being, because we need to look after ourselves as we go along, adjusting, learning, trying to delete some of the tradition that we think has been valuable to us, but we cannot maintain them anymore because there are certain reasons. So when our young people go back to Africa, they don't fit in. Why? And then when we come newly from Africa, it's difficult for us to fit in this community. So we need to look at all of those potential difficulties, but at the same time, how do we find time to talk about those difficulties, those challenges? Because we need to, even from a family perspective, do we talk about these things? Do we really sit down and discuss that we are losing our values? We need to maintain things and we need to gain new values because it's important. So please, let's add that to our menu as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Those important questions to consider. And even just sat here thinking about them myself personally, I'm like, okay. So I don't know, Rachel, did you still want to contribute? I saw your hand up earlier. Rachel?
Yeah, hello.
Rachel, you're on mute. Unmute yourself, please.
You can't hear.
She's on mute.
Hi, Rachel.
Is there any other person waiting, Stella? I think we've lost Rachel. During face-to-face, you ask people to keep quiet, but these days they keep themselves quiet.
Let me come in very quickly there.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, just to re-emphasize those very, very useful comments so far. I feel that we are actually in the right platform to address most of the well-being matters that affect us all. Now, these are identity issues we are talking about here, and we know how they affect us all. So thank you, Alice and James, for putting, bringing up those questions, very difficult questions, and actually which cause for difficult conversations, but conversations that will help us move on. I mean, as Alice was talking about, the conflicting perhaps situations we find ourselves in. Young people, I mean, the West Indies, the Africans, and finding those cultures, being, I don't want to use the one better than the other part. It's how it comes through. We also know that children who settle here, or families from the same country who settle here first, their children tend to overlook the children of the families who come to settle later, because there is that difference, especially in the accents or even in the way they do things. So again, it's important that we are aware of these things, because ultimately what we are talking about here is about well-being. How can we, as a community, then integrate in ways that will minimize the way that impacts on our well-being? Yeah. So I just thought I reinforce those very important points there that everybody has brought up.
Hello.
Hello, Rachel.
I don't know if they can still hear me.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say good afternoon and thank you again once more again for organizing this brilliant program today about our culture, our well-being. First of all, I look at it in different aspects, just like Mr. Momo was saying and everybody was saying. The well-being, how do we, classify it in a way that, in terms of psychological way, our environments, the society, particularly where we live, mentally and physically, for our well-being. For me, culture-wise, I came to this country when I was a mature person. So I find it very difficult when I came to this country, because when I used to go to school, we used to go in a group, myself and my sisters, my cousin, the whole lot of us, we wait for one another, we dress, and then we walk together to go to school. That alone was actually kind of part of our well-being, because when we are going to school, we are able to talk to, even though most of us, we live in the same house, but some of them are like neighborhood, that when we are going, we are happily going to school, chatting to one another. And that love and the friendship among us, like when they said, even in this country, it's good to talk. It makes you like a happy person. So psychologically, you're not thinking different angles. When I came to this country, staying by yourself is kind of big isolation to me. Sometimes I actually used to find it very difficult even to sleep at night because of loneliness. This is not my African background, where I can sit under my mango tree and see a next person passing and chat with them. And we used to like provoke one another. We make fun, we make joke, and everyone can tolerate it. When I came to this country, my younger sister, because they are kind of more English, when you speak a little bit, she will say, "Oh," she start crying. "What is that for, Cheba? It make for me." Like even if you open your eyes wide, the things that, oh, you're upsetting them. Even in my house, oh, like Mr. Momo said, in different perspective, what have we lost? Sometimes you're trying to talk to your own child, they don't seem to understand the things that we are shouting at them.
Yeah.
I normally say, no, I'm not shouting. This is my African background. When I talk, I don't whisper. I need to talk loud enough for you guys to be able to understand me. Which way do you want us to communicate with you guys so that you can understand us better? And even before the brothers or sister comes and crying, "Oh, they're giving me trouble, they're putting me into trouble." I said, there's nothing about trouble here. If you do something, if we don't know about it, we don't sit together and speak with you guys and direct you, who else is going to correct you? So there's so many different aspects in this country. It's a nice place, but there's so many things culturally that we learn. Even like I said, when my mom look at me some kind of way, I know exactly what that means, whether I should stay.
You're breaking up, Rachel.
Are you still there?
I think
In
we've
that
lost her.
area where
Maybe.
I am, whether I should move in our children in this society, what have I done wrong? So culture's got a lot of things. Oh, yeah, it's frozen. Hello?
Hello,
Yeah.
we are there.
Yeah, sorry, I
It
think
seems like you're breaking up bit by bit.
Yeah, you are breaking.
yeah.
Yeah. So Stella, is there any other person waiting?
Yes, there's a
This is
hand
the
up.
area we come for some football place now.
Oh, so sorry, Rachel. I think the connection isn't so great, but we've caught a lot of what you said, and we really appreciate your contribution. I mean, if maybe can move in location, or even just type in the chat with like your like last points. But thank you so much, Rachel, for all that. I think we have a hand up from Elder Singer, and then if Rachel, we can come back to you.
Oh, thank you, Stella, for giving me this opportunity. I've been missing in this forum for a while because of some timetable adjustment, but luckily today I managed to get in. Rightly said by everyone who came before. I believe that well-being and culture are both complex. And even the definition of well-being will vary according to cultures. What is termed well-being in Mozambique might not be what is termed well-being in Pakistan. And so there is this kind of complexity in defining well-being, and there is complexity in defining culture, because what is culture? That value you put in your culture in East Africa, in Tanzania, for example, might not be the same value that you will find in Russia. And so as we live in the majority of the culture, where we are all blanketed as blacks or whites, that's the first thing you see. If I walk in town, the first thing, the person who is indigenous here, a white English person, will define me through my skin or my color, the color of my skin. And so already, whether I'm from the Caribbean, I'm from America, I'm from South America, or I'm from Africa, already I am in that packet of black culture, or in that packet of black. I don't know if there is a black culture and a white culture is just standing there. I don't know. But in the first place, I am defined by the color of my skin, just because I live in a majority white people country. I never ever thought myself black until I came to Europe. I never walked in the streets of Dar es Salaam or Arusha or any town in Tanzania thinking myself, hey, I'm black walking in the street, because naturally we are all blacks. We are all Tanzanians. We are all different. I mean, same in terms of our color. And I have to say that you also identify people in their colors when you are back in your country in Africa, where majority of the people are black. That's why we have these terms of, in Swahili we say Mzungu, or in Nigeria they will say Oibo, or in other country they have a term which they refer to a white person. So because we are in a majority white people country, first of all, you have to accept that you are in a different place. Number two, you have to educate yourself that being black is not a sin or a disability. It's just you, yourself. And so within our homes, that's where we need to start educating and educating and educating ourselves first, and then educate our children that yes, you are a minority in the school where you go to. You are probably the only black kid in a white school which has got 1,000 pupils, and so you have to expect that a different treatment. While it's not right to be treated that way, but you will be treated that way anyway. The only thing, like they say, you can't prevent birds flying over your head, but you can prevent them from building a nest on your head. And so when we educate ourselves and know who we are and find our identity, and our children know their identity, it adds to the way they will respond to the treatment that they receive where they go. When they grow up, when they go to work, they will face the same treatment. And so to let them understand who they are, teach them ways in which they can make themselves heard, that this is something bad you are doing to me, and you are doing to me because I'm in a minority culture, but I won't accept it. And also we have to educate the majority who we live with. It helps so much, because some people will treat you just because, even unaware, unconsciously, just treat you because they are biased naturally because of their majority culture. And so it's important that we first of all, define well-being, even in your own home. Know what culture is, educate your kids, educate yourself, and stand for yourself. And these kinds of education, sometimes we complain as a community, but we don't take this education to the white culture. Here we are, all of us, but how many of us will go to educate somebody else outside ourselves? Alice has done those researches, but sometimes those researches are only known to us. And the education given to the white majority lacks content from us and our values that we think can be taken to the other majority culture and reframe those cultures or retrain those cultures. We rarely speak about them. And to me, I think even in the psychology world, the whole of psychological world is framed on the white or European and American culture. Lately, you find that, yes, a lot has been borrowed from the Asian culture, Chinese culture, is filtering into the white European culture, but the Black culture, if there is that kind of thing, is not being filtered into the European culture because we haven't taken it ourselves. We have a tendency of dropping even our good things to adapt to the white culture so that we can live. It's not a matter of flexibility, but it's like a forced way, and we want to force ourselves to fit into that culture instead of forcing the other culture also to get to a meeting point between us and them. I think we are in a position where we have a lot of Black, African, or Caribbean cultures which can be of benefit to the European culture. A lot, and a lot. But we have to be resilient and we have to be doing them in a way that is not just a blanket, but target some of the cultures that we want to infiltrate into other cultures so that we can live in a better world whereby our well-being is considered by other cultures. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adesingo, for that. That's a very interesting point. There's quite a few people that raise their hands. Eva, it's Eva, Emeka, and Rachel again. Just start with Eva.
Thank you, Stella. I'm just going to keep it very brief. I just think culture being a way of people's life can be different, but it can also be very enriching. And if we look at the other spectrum of the good things that we can take, if 2 or 3 cultures come together, they can learn from each other and do great things. So I think in terms of culture, if we look at it from an evolution point of view, we always have to, as many people have said, pick the good things and try and just also promote what we can. So I think it has to be something that goes on with evolution as the kids grow up and we're adapting to everything so that we can keep it meaningful, keep the things that we like, and also adopt what we can get from other people. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Emeka?
Hello. Hi. Hello. Sorry, bear with me.
No worries.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Like I said before, what I can gather from this whole talk is, I'm all about learning. I'm all about the learning new cultures. Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
There's talk in the background.
There's
Okay.
somebody talking at the background.
Okay, yeah. Okay, bear with me. Sorry, bear with me. Hello? Hi.
The noise is on again.
Now, okay.
Yeah, I think you wanted to contribute. I think just give him.
Can you let Anne or Rachel come in because your time is running? Yeah.
Anne or Rachel?
Yeah, can I jump in?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, my name is Anne, and this is a very interesting topic about culture. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but it's kind of breaking as well.
Yeah, I think we all come from different culture, and the topic have made me think about something I haven't thought about before, about cultural and my mental well-being. And to my perspective, I think it's more of a mindset and mindset and what I want to adapt. Because, for instance, I come from Kenya, from a tribe called Kikuyu, but we have cultures that I lived with, I was brought up with, and I brought some to UK. But again, there's some cultural, there are some cultural things that I would still want to live with for my mental well-being, but there's some that I need to drop out because they have no value to me. They have no value to my children. And having children that are grown up, personally as a parent, because it's quite personal with culture and what you want to teach, what you want to keep, I think I've left it like an open book to my children, because some of them, I don't want to push them to live like my mother lived or my grandmother, or like what I did, or to do things I did when I was a teenager, because it might be more damaging to them than any good. So culture well-being only makes sense depending with your personality and how much you can take and how much you want to keep. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, sure, Dr. Kamina.
You've muted yourself, Dr. Kanina.
Now, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can hear you now. Earlier on, you are on mute. All
right. Now, there's this idea that some of our cultures are stagnant and backward, and that they don't evolve or compete with other cultures, something which I think I would like to not to agree with, because I think African culture is not about our grandmothers and grandfathers. It is a way of life of the people. And actually, all cultures in the world are evolutionary, and they go with the time and the situations and the context in which you operate. So we have to appreciate that in our own cultures, we also grow, and that does not mean that you may not learn from one another or from other cultures. But like the previous speaker, Mimi too, I think that is the name, Mimi too. I think it would be a good thing to suggest a practical thing of how minorities can make impact within majorities, because that is where the voice gets lost. By being minority, your voice, your stability, your sustainability is dependent on the majority, and therefore they dictate the terms and the conditions and the way of doing things, and the voice of minority may not be heard. So if Mimi would have a proposal on how maybe we can make a contribution to the majority cultures when we are minorities, even if it will be an innovative method, I think we would be happy to try to adapt it and try to do something about it.
To need to develop calmness.
Hello? I have finished myself.
Thank you, Dr. Klina. I think, was that a question to...
Yeah, thank you for your question. I think there are so many ideas about how the minority culture can influence the majority culture, but one of them is through art and music. Maybe art includes music and many other things. But the more, let's say, the more we are engaged in local events, play our music in local events, and create an avenue where people will be curious to learn who we are. That is one of the vehicles in which we can educate the majority culture about who we are and what we are bringing to them, because we have to sell ourselves. It's a world where people are engaged in buying and selling. It's like a transaction, and that kind of way in which we transact. You have your culture, I take this from you, and I have my culture, I give you this. And the winner takes it all. So if we don't express our culture, then who will know about us? If I don't know what the Kikuyus eat, how can I eat it? But if you brought me githeri or whatever, and I tasted it, and then I know, okay, oh man, when I am really in a way, I want happiness and joy, I will eat githeri because it has got everything. It's got potatoes in there, it's got maize, it's got beans, it's got this and that. Oh, is this how these guys are eating? So let's put ourselves into those places whereby we can meet the majority of the culture, and they can know exactly what we can give to them, because now they live with assumptions. From very early age, they see from their televisions that Africans are poor. They see in their televisions kids from Africa with without clothes jumping around. But then it means those guys are, sometimes those kids, they might not have clothes, but the weather is conducive. So it doesn't really matter when they walk bare-chested. When it comes to summer, they all take their shirts off as well. And so it's just a matter of educating people wherever you live. What do you give to your neighbors who are white? Sometimes you don't even know the name of the next door neighbor. But in your cultural perspective, in Kikuyu, it's not possible that you don't know your next door neighbor. So why don't you be upfront and go and knock, say, oh, my name is Grace Kanina, and I've just come to say hello to you. In exchange, they will tell you their names. Next time, offer them something to eat, which maybe is not cooked, but a fruit which is popular into your area, and say, oh, have you seen this fruit before? I just wanted you to taste it because this fruit comes from Kenya. And by that, already you have permeated his way of eating through a fruit, and gradually you grow like that. Somebody spoke about how do you integrate yourself if someone doesn't want to? How do I assimilate myself to their lives? How do I permeate their lives? It's through conversation, it's through interaction, and because they cannot start to interact with you because of some reasons known to themselves, interact with them, show them a way, because you are a visitor. You have to not a visitor as such, but you are new to their culture, so you have to kind of like not forcibly do it, but in a way, you forcing to be known through your music, through your dancing. I remember when last time, maybe 2 years ago, when the Maasais came from Kenya to dance, and they danced at Palmer Park. It was a big education to the indigenous white people. It's something that when done, it leaves that impact in their mind, and they have that curiosity of learning more about your minority culture just because you have introduced it to them. I think I'll stop there.
Yep, that's very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that contribution. I think it's very important from the chat. And one thing that I love is that though we discuss very important issues, so we always try and bring a solution. So that's a really good contribution. Thank you. We're going to try and I can see still a couple of hands. Going to try and wrap up. Rachel, Alice, and the last kind of contributions, and then bring in James to wrap up, please.
Hello, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think Sia, is it Shia was first? She's been putting her hand up for a long time.
Apologies, Sia. Sorry,
All
I didn't
right.
see that.
Yeah, thank you for every contribution about our different kind of cultures. Like what our brother is saying, I mean, there are little things we can do, we can impact on people outside there. When we came to this country, most of us, we came as an adult, we've got children or we brought children. And those children are going to the schools here, they are sometimes taking part in the community. I think in our area or in our school, what we lack mostly as Black people, when they say there is something to take part in our children's school, we are so busy, we don't attend them. So in that line, we can't participate and teach other people who we are. Because example, I've got my little boy who goes to school. Usually when they do like summer festival, they invite all different cultures or different people from different countries. We used to attend, and I tell you, because I took part in that particular year, 1 year, where we brought in our flags, we cooked our own food, everybody put their tables, they put the country they are from. So that created a bit of impact in among ourselves. Even up to today, the school know that Sierra Leone jollof rice is nice. So that's one of the things they took from that particular event. So anytime I meet with the organizer, oh, you remember that rice you cooked, the jollof rice? We enjoy that. So they carried that for a long time. But because we were able to participate, that was a good thing. I think we need to have time, even if it's once a year, they have their summer festival or something, we as parents need to, take part in that so that we can, had our voice. Because if we don't take part, we don't communicate. Like here, we've got a carnival in Bristol. So Sierra Leoneans, they know us that when we took part in these carnivals, we bring our cultures in, they are masquerade, we bring our music in, we bring our own things in, the food. So we are taking part in this community. It's very difficult, but if we try to take part in those events, then I think they will hear us. Even some people go to churches. Our churches here, there are times every year that every culture, you bring your flag, you have to raise your flag, you sing your own sing, we sing our music, we come out and dance. So all these things, we learn from each other, and that can help us a lot to put ourselves out there and believe we can make an impact. That's what I'm going to say. And within our us as well, example, I always appreciate, like when we meet in family meeting or social meeting, Mr. Momo have our culture that we put libation. That's giving first to our ancestors before we even start anything. Even like the children among us, our children who are born here, who brought here, they know that part of our culture. Because when they say that libation, everybody know what to do, how to listen, wait for that time, they perform the ceremony, we all laugh and share at the end of it. And that is, the children are growing up with that. So I think these are some of the things we can do to set ourselves off to make impact in the community as we are in minority. That's all what I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Sia. Thank you very much for that contribution. We have Rachel and then Alice.
Oh, hello, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Aleron. I think my reception was actually giving a problem because I'm not in the house. I just want to say once more again, thank you so much for organizing such a brilliant program. And I think one of the things that we are just talking about, how do we get the culture together? I'm going to start from this. Organizing something like that, the Zoom, in these days that we can meet and talk about difficulties. We have all sorts of different expertise in this program. Like we can actually, I think most of the things that push us, that keep us aside is like we try to be very private as Black people in the sense that our culture don't kind of expect us to be there and talking too much. We do not believe in talking too much. But things like that, the Zoom, and then where we know that when something happened, the people that we can knock on their door for them to be able to support us is very, very important in our society as a whole. So I would say one of the key things have to be tolerance, acceptance, because if I accept you, regardless whether you're from Kenya, you're from Jamaica, I'm able to cope with you and I'm able to work with you. I think it's the most key, very important thing for we Black people to be able to learn to accept one another, to tolerate one another, regardless who we are. And sometimes it's got quite a lot of impact on us that if I go in the middle of Jamaicans, will they be able to accept me? Yes, I'm a Black person. I should be able to speak with them and be able to feel free that we are all the same. If I go near a certain culture, how are they gonna accept me? So that is a very, very important thing. So a Zoom like that, where we can communicate and learn that we are all one another's keeper. And if something happened to me when I'm talking to you, you're not gonna pull me down, you're not gonna kind of behave the way I'm not expecting. I'm open to speak my problem to somebody who is willing to listen, who is willing to advise me, then I feel free. But sometimes when you talk to somebody and somebody take it a different direction, it's actually demoralize you that you don't want to speak to them anymore. So to me, I want to say thank you. And I've got lots of support in my community, people like Mr. Momo, like I'm here, I'm in Bristol. If something happened in Reading, I go to Reading. I know there are people there who are willing to welcome me, and our children can learn from that, that our culture is based on communication and acceptance, and even we are more family because we don't just go and sit in a corner, we talk to one another. We are family united. We are community people. Sometimes you got your neighbors there in the house for 10 years. You don't even know who that person is. You don't know what is going on. People die in the house. Nobody knows about them, all because of isolation. So it's very, very much versatile, and it's a very key area. So I want to say, I would talk forever, but I want to stop here so far. Since that our culture, our faith, if I can add that as well, we do believe in our faith quite a lot, that if something happened to me, is the will of God. But sometimes before that thing happened, you can bring it on board where you can see people can help you instead of us blaming everything on faith. So that is what is holding African society. Our person died, we don't investigate because of the faith that we carry in ourselves. God has taken, yeah, God has given, God has taken. So all these things, our children will learn from it when we are together. So I want to say once more, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Momo, and thank you to the entire Reading and everybody that is on this program. I'm so sorry because where I was, I couldn't get, the reception was playing up. But I love to be on program like that where we learn so much, to be able to learn from one another and accept and tolerate one another. Thank you.
A recommendation, please, just one sentence. Is it okay?
Yeah, carry on.
I want to recommend that when we get over the lockdown, we create a Pan-African marketplace for our African culture in Reading marketplace, where we will bring the foods and let others come, and we invite others to come and shop and share those type of things. Maybe Alice can help us. Maybe we can set it in Reading University.
Hi, I just wanted to talk about the culture, back to recommendations which were mentioned here. I think we also underestimate that we actually have been doing a lot of these cultural aspects that we're doing. For example, RG2 Radio was formed here. It's mainly from Caribbean. The music they play there, the things they do on there, if any of you know about RG2, they are their values, their cultural things, they promote those things. They promote also the diversity of things that come in there. In mostly they play reggae, they celebrate reggae, which was originally from the Caribbeans. They made it worldwide. So to stipulate that we haven't done enough spreading of our culture, we have. So many people listen to reggae. UB40 adopted reggae from the Caribbeans. So we have all those things. There's the new RCE newspaper, which has been formed, of course, by Yvonne. I went to the launch. She's going to promote all these things. She writes about things. If you want to get in touch with her, she'll write a story about the cultural aspects of that. We don't celebrate that enough. I've done a research that I've put there, a lot of research, Aging Well, small ones in Reading. We don't come to those. I've called out on these forums, on other forums, come, we research. When we research these things, they stay in. And our children of our children see these things. We've done the heritage and culture, interviewed people who have lived, who came during the Windrush, and interviewed them about Oxford Road, where most Black people came and lived, some of them, and they brought out their stories. Those who came forward, those who wanted to be part of it, came forward, talked about their stories. They are there. When the older generation grow, second, fourth, fifth, sixth generation, they're going to see it in the museum. You create the spaces. You make sure you come forward also with ideas. And there's always somebody willing to listen to those ideas. Aging Well did the same. Research helps in that things are not thrown away. I know many people are skeptical about research, but within that, we also had Untold. Untold are young people. Yesterday, I was contacted by young people, third generation Caribbean, young ones who do a lot of dancing. They want to be also involved in small things that we research. Untold are there. They came back, they interviewed themselves, knowing, set on a podcast about Oxford Road. What is it that I like about Oxford Road? They're young, they're 20-something, and talked about that. We recorded that. Now it's going to be seen historically by other young people. I go and buy my hair, I like the food. I don't understand Oxford Road because there's also things that I didn't understand. It used to be like this before. They talk about real things. It used to be a place where you get drugs, you get prostitutes, but it's very well defined. People don't want to talk about these things, but young people are having these difficult conversations, and they are talking about it. It's there on that website if you want to listen to it. Untold is different young people from different countries who have formed this thing called Untold. So there is a lot that is happening. What is called the music from East Africa, where our children fly to Portugal to go and see is it Afro music, Afro beats. It's worldwide now, but we don't celebrate those things. people fly to go and see all these stars. The South African music has gone worldwide. The culture in America, which they formulated themselves when they went there and started their own culture, how you make jeans dressed, how you dress with trainers, how you make chains that were used during slavery, if you research that, and they've made it into their own dressing. We don't celebrate all those things. We think we are still inferior, but all these cultures now are embedded in our own culture in different aspects. I can't wear anything from Zimbabwe because we don't have a cultural dress. My children ask me that. What I did is my wardrobe is a suitcase, is full of all kinds of clothes from different countries in Africa. So when I go out, I dress one time looking like I'm from South Africa. I dress one time looking like I'm from Nigeria. Nigerians have continuously done that with their dressing and everything. So let's not undertone that we are actually doing some of these things, but also try and see how the children are embracing these things. The bullying that happens in school, black and on black, is happening, and we are not talking about that. Because if we talk about the sense that there is a black culture are different and educate from Caribbean and from Africa, our children will have a cohesion of living together and not the rule and divide that happens. Asians have continuously do that. We know very well. They've got their culture, the way they dress. They might not speak different, but they've kept some of these aspects together. I'm sorry I'm waffling, but I just want to bring people to say, when we have research, when we have other things that we do, please come and join. I know people work very hard or they do other things. Just come and join. And then we have these things recorded, done, and celebrate the good things that are there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alice, for that. Wow, there have been a lot of amazing contributions and a lot of, things we could take away from this, and ways to get involved. So thank you so much for that. Just before I bring in James, I'm just going to bring in Eva just so she can give us some updates about community work that's happening with Interview. Eva?
Thank you, Stella. Yes, thank you for the contribution. So this week, I just wanted to let everybody know what's happening. So Utilivu Women's Group have an open garden day visit tomorrow. I've put it on the chat, and the time is between 10 to 11, and it's on the Goddard's farm allotment. So if you're free, please come in. That will be really good. We also have a survey, which is from the Reading Borough Council. When they really want to know about the investment in community support, how has the community actually benefited you? I've put the link in the chat as well. And you could please kindly fill that out, because then it will really determine how much funding we get or how much they can plan to support grassroots communities. And do please share that out if you have other communities that do support you. Now, we do usually have this Thursday meeting, but on top of that, we also have a seated exercise, which is done on a Wednesday between 11 to 12 each week. And that is, you can find the details of that on our Facebook page, Instagram page as well. I'll put all the links on the chat so you can have that. So whenever you need any information on what's going on, we'll always try to feedback on the channels that we have. And also, if you want to drop me, I'll leave my number on there. If you want to get me to add you to our Utilivu WhatsApp group as well, just send me a message and I will do that. Thank you very much, Stella. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Eva. So I hope to see you all there at the garden. So James, as we just now wrap up.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. And I think it's been a wonderful afternoon or part of the morning as well for all of us, where we've been able to really talk about cultural issues from different perspectives, different ranging experiences lived in this country and also from back home. But just wondering, one day you wake up and you invite a friend, or a friend invites you to go for dinner somewhere, and you go and suddenly on the menu you find matuke and zaza, fufu, moi moi, and all of those things. I was just wondering what comes to mind about those things, because these are some of the things that I've been really dreaming about, that one day I will go to any of the restaurants, not only on Oxford Road, but all over Reading, and find my food on the menu, fufu, cassava leaf, crane, and all of those things, jollof rice, somebody mentioned that earlier, matuke, zaza, and all of those things. So it's really important for us to begin to ponder why these things don't exist. Why are we still not able to prioritize some of these things? I think it's doable. We just need to understand how we go about these things. I think I can understand very well how Auntie Alice is really talking about research, because in any community, evidence is very important. So if we don't have any evidence that this is good, some people do not even bother to try it. But I have enough abundant evidence that our African food is one of the most important cuisines in the whole world. If you want to challenge me, please find out. But we have beautiful food, we have beautiful people, we have beautiful tradition. But going back to those 4 questions, what are we losing out? What are we gaining? What have we kept in our tradition? So let's go along with all of this, and as we go away from here today, from a CBT perspective, really, I need to look at what is provided. You know, we talk about depression, we talk about low self-esteem and confidence, and all of these things do have elements in our culture. If you went to work and the way you dress, the way you talk is being considered as low grade, nobody seems to listen to you because of your accent, definitely that's going to cause you to be depressed. You go to that work the next day thinking, how will they accept me? How are they going to perceive me? So that's the reason why it's really important for me to bring to light some of these things. And even when we talk about worry, people worry a lot, you know, that when I go to work, maybe my manager is not going to even listen to my explanation. I have ideas, but the way to put my ideas across are going to cause problem to myself. And I have wonderful ideas. But the moment I mention them, somebody is going to pick it up and they know how to talk about it and then become their ideas. So again, we have all of those things to lose because we're not able to push ourselves because we think our culture is a little bit inferior to the other culture. And we'll talk about social anxiety. It's also important when we'll talk about young people, because sometimes when they present themselves, they're not just presenting themselves, they present the whole being, their tradition, their way of life, their way of doing stuff. So if somebody is frowning on them, marginalizing them because of that, they develop social anxiety. So sometimes we go along checking, oh, my boy doesn't like to mix, or my child don't like to mix with other people. Or when we go to places, they don't really come out of their shells, they're in that cocoon protected. It's because there are so many other factors. It's not just about us, it's about what else is happening in the society. So social anxiety is common as well. People panic as well. You know, when they want to enter into a situation, they panic. Are they going to receive me well? Will they treat me like anybody else? Or will they treat me differently? So all of these things do happen. And when we encounter any difficulties, either at work or in town or in school, university, we come home, we begin to procrastinate, ruminate about it. That can develop. It's a symptom of depression because you talk about this thing, you procrastinate, and that go on and on and on, begin to develop into proper depression. And also work-related stress. It's not just about you being told off by your boss. It's also about the marginalization because your views are no value. There was a time when I first came to this country, I went to work with fried fish. The smell alone was frowned upon by my colleagues, and they were all talking about it. And I said, but when I eat this in Africa, nobody talks about it. I mean, for me, I love the smell of fish, and I like it. So I had to really be resistant to that discrimination, to allow myself to take my food every other time. In fact, it made me take my food almost every day, and I had lunch, and I will not go to any place to eat but in the dining room. So how many of us we go to work and hide and eat our food because it's an African food? So we need to start from ourselves. So when we talk about work-related stress, it's not really just about other things. We need to come to culture as well, because culture is also a valuable asset to us, because that's how we express ourselves. When we become ill, we present it in our own culture. When a GP is diagnosing us, they need to understand that we have a tradition to call those disease or illnesses. Headache in my country or depression in my country, perhaps if you look at all the tribes, they can talk about the heart. The heart is broken. In my tribe, your heart is broken, means you're depressed. So if I went to a GP and they begin to bring other symptoms, it's not going to measure up with my symptoms. So for me, that diagnosis is not going to hold water until my ideas actually are being recommended or appreciated. So when we come to CBT, really, in terms of thinking, it's about how we think and how we feel and how we behave around a particular behavior. That's the core factor of cognitive behavioral therapy. So when we look at all of these things, it's really important for you to be able to present how you present your illness in your own way of life. And I think the GP will be able to come down to you. So most of the time, the reason why we, maybe Africans, the uptake in terms of CBT is very low is because of those nuances, those understanding. Because the way we explain the things that happen to us might be very different from a white therapist sitting in front of us. Because if you went to a white therapist to say, look, I have done this just because somebody said this and I laughed, and then things have become a bit difficult for me at work, they will look at it differently. They will like, what do you think about it? But our thinking is different. We think about it differently, and we think about different things differently. And then so many of you have mentioned that. So it's really important to embed our well-being in whatever we do. Your culture, your tradition, your food, and everything that we do, we need to have that cultural element. Let's don't leave it behind, because you cannot go to work and leave your culture at home. You cannot go to school and leave your tradition at home. It follows you everywhere you go. That's the reason why we need to go back to those questions. What are we losing out because we are trying to adjust? What are we gaining because we are trying to adjust? What are the losses? What are the gains? And how do we measure those losses? Is it in terms of happiness or distress? Is it making us lose friends or we gain friends? So please, as we go away from today, our well-being is really important to us, and culture is one of those things. But let's start with our beginning at home, your family setting. And as somebody mentioned about my orientation to libation, because I think libation has been one of those elements that my parents or my community taught me I will never abandon. Even my kids who were born in this country, they know that when libation comes, daddy, don't make a mess about it. And there's no joke about it. And it's important. It's one of those areas that we connect with the people, we connect with our faith, and it's really important for us to measure ourselves to little things that we have done. Rituals like that can make us become more disciplined. And when we talk about self-control, it's more embedded in African tradition as far as I'm concerned. If you want to find out, research it. Because self-control means going according to the rituals. We have so many rituals in our communities that can make us become self-disciplined, self-control. If the time is not ripe, we're not going to do it. And we do it when the time is ripe. So that's self-control. We don't just do it because we want to do it. We do it because it's relevant for us to do it. So please, let's try. Let's try in the next 5 years so that when you go to most restaurants in Reading, you will find Matoke, you will find Zaza, or fufu or kenken or jollof rice or whatever you have, moi. So please, let's try to begin to influence, to repackage our culture. We can repackage it. I mean, there are certain things that we don't need to maintain because they no longer relevant to us. I know Dr. Karina was saying sometimes culture can stand alone. I don't believe in that anymore. Culture will never stand alone. It has to integrate, but we need to have a force that we can integrate our culture. We need to exert that force that people can really understand, and it comes from education, awareness, and actually the appropriate education. We're not talking about just educating somebody on irrelevant issues. Appropriate education, understanding, mutual understanding, but also perseverance and also the courage to talk about difficult situations, difficult issues. Please, let's try to pursue that. Let's be bold enough to talk about something that is bothering you, including our faith. You can take it to your church, but try to activate yourself. Do something about it before you ask God, what have you done? I mean, maybe God decided not to question us most of the time because that's what we lack. We need to really check. If I pray for something, do you follow it up? Do you do it? You know, you can't just go to church every Sunday and pray, or Saturday and pray for something you're not doing anything about. And that doesn't mean culture. It means you need to change the attitude, please. So let's try. And finally, just the work of Martin Seligman. This was one of the guys that talk about the glass half full, talk about helplessness. And I think for most of us, that helplessness is quite key, which does not even allow us to activate ourselves because we believe in destiny, faith. This is happening because it's destiny. And I don't think God will destine the African to be poor all the time, to be underdeveloped all the time. We need to step out and hold it up to your workplace, your family, in the community, challenge issues that you think is not going your way. I'm not going to say put your ideas all the time on the line, but don't be allowed to be moved about. Be allowed to discuss certain things and face up. Allow them to hear your voice. Go to the schools, school plays, influence them with your tradition. I have done that so many times with my local primary school, and they know that my tradition is so important to me. Sometimes they like my drums. So please, let's try to influence ourselves, but also out in the community. So I want to thank you all, and I hope we catch up again next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I've put in, sorry, quickly, I've put in work there for culture and heritage. Also another research about recipes. People were talking about our recipes. We don't have anything. We did ask people about contributing to the culture and heritage recipes. They are already there, Oxford Road, and we can try and do it again so that we can contribute and put more recipes from our culture. So there's a lot of things that you can contribute towards. And the story of Oxford Road is going to continue. Yes. So if there's any other people who want to get in touch with me about this research that are going to stay forever, the stories we need, the real stories, everybody, it's just simple, just get in touch with us and we can keep these conversations going and leave it for our future generations. I think Chowdhury was also part of the research that I did for Aging Well and some other people here. So we need more people to do more research, keep it so that our future generations can see these things, because we have very little to fall on when it comes to our heritage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. I know we are 13 minutes over, but worth it. Yeah, we try to keep it to 1 o'clock so that we can all come back next time. But very useful conversation going on. Now, I know Stella was to give us feedback so that we all know how the conversation has gone. But what we can do for the sake of time, as you leave a comment, because all that will be picked by Tombe. and Stella, and they will help us improve on what, or rather get us to know how we are doing. So please, let's see you all next week. Stella, Shalom, Eva, and Tombe, James, thank you so much, and all the contribution.